Hello and welcome back to the Quest Log, my journey through the history of computer and video role-playing games. When I started this series, it was because I wanted to better understand one of my favorite video game genres. Role-playing games have come a long way from their modest beginnings, and many games have left behind legacies that linger to this day. In order to appreciate the history of these games, I wanted to replicate the experience of playing them when they originally came out, as much as possible anyway. What I didn't realize at the time was that my goal to have an authentic experience would become a quest in and of itself. When we last left Richard Garriott, he had just finished high school and released his very first commercial game, Akalabeth. By modern standards, it was primitive, but for those who played it when it came out, it was a breakthrough in computer RPGs, and so it sold very well. Because of this success, Garriott began work on a new RPG, which expanded on Akalabeth in nearly every way, and in 1981, California Pacific published the game Ultima. We begin, as always, with character creation. Gone are the random stats from Akalabeth. You have 90 points to distribute amongst the 6 stats, and you are free to do so as you please. Also new are the choices of class and race. Race only affects a few stats, so other than personal preference, you should really only worry about what stats are important to you in the beginning of the game, for, as we'll see later, you will eventually have a way to get all of your stats as high as you want. Class is similarly minor, but wizards have the added bonus of being able to use a few spells that are unavailable to the other classes. In my innocent naivete, I thought that these choices would have a bigger impact than they actually wound up having, so I ended up going with a human fighter, since I thought that would make things simpler, and also I might be boring. Once you arrive in the overworld, Ultima shows just how far it advanced from Garriott's previous effort. Colorful tiles that, while basic, clearly convey what they are supposed to represent have replaced the stark black emptiness of Akalabeth's overworld. I mean, that's not the best grass I've ever seen, but at least it's better than the box trees, right? Unfortunately, what isn't gone is the excruciatingly slow movement. As before, Richard Garriott coded Ultima in BASIC, although he was aided by Ken Arnold, a friend of Garriott's, who provided some assembly language routines for graphics, among a few other things. Food has also returned, but you start with 99, and you don't lose it as fast as 1 per turn, which means you don't need to starve to death all the time anymore. Ah, simple pleasures. I had only wandered a short while when, much to my surprise, a pack of 6 orcs attacked me. While random encounters would become something of a staple of RPGs, it seems Ultima was one of, if not the first, to introduce them. Combat in the overworld is turn-based, with your character taking a turn, followed by the entire group of enemies acting as one. I kept hitting the attack key until I noticed that my health was, not doing so well. And then I died. Rest in peace, me. Death, it seems, is not so permanent in Ultima. Upon dying, you are resurrected in a random location with your health reset to 99. This is a welcome change from the brutal permadeath of Akalabeth, but it has its own problems. When resurrected, you respawn in a random location on the map, and when I say random, I mean random. This means your resurrection can place you on a water tile, in which you cannot move, and your only recourse is to wait until a passing sea monster ends your pitiful existence. Eventually, I fumbled my way to my first town. The town tile looks similar to the ones from Akalabeth, but the interior of the town couldn't be more different. Where Akalabeth's villages were just single-screen shops and nothing else, Ultima's towns practically burst with life in comparison. The visual style is different from the overworld, with your character becoming much smaller, but the controls remain the same. Each town has a different name, but they all have the same layout with a variety of shops and little NPCs running around. I found the NPCs particularly interesting. I'm not sure what it says about me, but my first thought upon seeing their little pixelated forms was to wonder if I could kill them. This is a role-playing game, so I suppose my human fighter might be a touch on the evil side. As it turns out, you can attack anyone in town. And the townspeople and guards don't particularly like that, for some reason. Combat in towns is a bit different from the overworld, as you have to position yourself next to your target and attack in the right direction. You can move 1 tile per frame, but only in the cardinal directions, while the NPCs can move diagonally. Defeated and embarrassed by the town guards, I went in search of a way to get my character in better shape. Dungeon entrances dot the landscape of Ultima, and it was time to see what lay within. Oh no. Oh no. This is familiar. Much too familiar. Apparently, Garriott liked his dungeons in Akalabeth so much that he just copied them over to Ultima. Well, I guess there are some changes. A few new objects, such as coffins and traps, await you in the labyrinthine corridors, and a whole slew of new monsters are just eager to kill you over and over again. Combat in the dungeon is the same as Akalabeth, with you taking turns with the monsters to fight. You have only one attack, and it uses whatever weapon you have readied. You can ready a weapon, armor, or spell with the R key, but it takes a turn. There are some combat spells which you can purchase from towns, but as I did not choose to play a wizard, my options were limited, and so I usually just used the normal attack. Again, you can only attack one monster at a time, but if a monster sneaks up behind you or to your side, they can attack you as well. Unfortunately, Garriott didn't make combat much more interesting in Ultima, and he made it just as easy to get lost. But eventually I made my way out of the dungeon and gained some much-needed hit points. After gaining some experience and health, I felt ready to continue exploring the overworld. In addition to the towns and dungeons, I found castles. The castle view is much the same as the town view. Each castle has a king, a jester, guards, and a dungeon with a princess locked up inside. Now, I don't know exactly what sort of kingdoms these people live in, but I find it a bit strange that every single king has a princess locked up. This raises all sorts of questions. Is that this king's daughter, or is it the daughter of a different king? If you talk to the king, you can offer gold or service. Offering gold lets you exchange money for hit points. This is useful when you don't want to grind or happen to have some cash. Other than killing monsters in dungeons, the only way to get more health is to pay for it. If you offer service, the king gives you a quest. My first quest was to kill a gelatinous cube. And so, with newfound purpose, I went back into the nearest dungeon and started working my way into its unremarkable depths. If you purchase some ladder up and down spells from a town, the dungeons are much more bearable. After killing a few monsters, I would come back to the surface to claim my hit points and to buy new equipment when I could afford it. Certain monsters are only found below a particular level, and the gelatinous cubes start on level 3, so it took me a while to get to where I could make it down that far and back without dying. When I found one at last, the gelatinous bastard disintegrated my armor, but I managed to defeat it anyway. After working my way back to the surface and to the castle, I turned in my quest in exchange for a red gem, and the king told me my first clue to beating the game. It requires all 4 gems to launch the time machine. I haven't mentioned Ultima's story yet, because at this point in my playthrough I didn't really know anything about it. The manual doesn't say anything, and unlike Akalabeth, there is no intro screen to let you know what's going on. That said, I honestly expected a standard fantasy RPG with swords and orcs and whatnot, yet this king is telling me about a time machine. To learn more about the world, you need to visit a pub. Each town in Ultima has one, and for a single gold piece, Varg, the barkeep, will give you a drink and a randomly selected piece of advice. These blurbs range from the inane, "This is a great game," to the useful. "The princess will give a great reward to the one who saves her, and an extra gift if the player's 8th level or greater." But eventually he just kind of lays everything out. "Bub, you best know that over 1,000 years ago, Mondane the Wizard created an evil gem. With this gem, he is immortal and cannot be defeated. The quest of Ultima is to traverse the lands in search of a time machine. Upon finding such a device, you should go back in time to the days before Mondane created the evil gem and destroy him before its creation. If you do this, you will save the universe and win the game." My first quest complete, and the whole universe apparently at stake, I headed to the other castle on the continent. This was the castle of the fabled Lord British, the king from Akalabeth and the alter ego of the game's creator, Richard Garriott. He accepts gold or service as well, but his quest is not to kill a monster, but instead to find a place called the Tower of Knowledge. By this point I'd pretty much explored the area I could get to by foot, and I hadn't seen anything with that name. I headed to the transportation shop in the nearest town. Ultima has a number of vehicles that the player can purchase, but they don't actually increase movement speed. How disappointing. The land vehicles decrease the number of food you lose with each step, but the real game opens up when you get a vehicle that can travel over water, such as the frigate. Water, as you might have noticed, is all over the place. Once I had the frigate, the whole game world opened up to me. Moving around in a vehicle works just like walking around land, but instead of attacking with the A key like you normally do, You can press the F key to fire your cannons in the frigate. In fact, all of the controls in Ultima are like this. You press the E key to enter a town or dungeon, but B to board a vehicle. To open a chest, you unlock it with U, but you open coffins with O. The game came with a reference card detailing all of the controls, and I needed to refer to it constantly as I played. I would have much preferred some context-sensitive buttons instead of having to remember so many different controls, but the fact that you can do so many different things is an impressive achievement when you compare Ultima to its contemporaries. At this point in my playthrough, it is already clear how much of an improvement this game is over Akalabeth. Richard Garriott really expanded on the original concept, and Ultima is more epic in pretty much every way. Of course, with a game this large, you couldn't hope to beat it in one sitting, which is why Ultima has a handy save function. Just hit the Q key and... Uh-oh. Let's try saving again. This is not good. Alright, keep trying. Okay, it says it worked, but let's restart and load just to make sure. Everything looked okay, but when I tried to enter a town, this happened. This is not what is supposed to happen, by the way. My save game with several hours of progress had been corrupted. While cursing my luck, I spent several days trying to think of a solution. It occurred to me that I could get into the game okay, and it looked like my stats and inventory were alright. It was just that when I tried to enter a castle or town, everything went to hell. A friend suggested that I might try loading the game and saving immediately, and wouldn't you know it, it worked. We're back in business. While sailing along the coastline and fighting the occasional sea monster, I came across some islands with buildings unlike any I had seen before. Unlike towns, castles, and dungeons, entering these does not transfer the game to a different mode, but instead plays a brief, I guess you could call it a cutscene, involving some text at the bottom of the screen, followed by one of your stats going up. Well, this was a pleasant surprise to be sure, especially when you realize you can do it over and over again by going to a different building and coming back. It is in fact the only way to increase these stats. The Tower of Knowledge is one of these locations, and visiting it raises your intelligence and completes Lord British's quest. Upon returning to British, he congratulated me and rewarded me with an increase to my strength. Curious, I offered service again, and he told me to go find the Tower of Knowledge. Okay. There was another building on the way to the Tower of Knowledge called the Pillars of Protection that raises your agility, and so, with my character still rather weak, I took the most obvious course of action. And thus began my journey of tedium, traveling between Lord British's castle, the Pillars of Protection, and the Tower of Knowledge, all the while killing random monsters and occasionally going to the store to stock up on food. You know, adventuring stuff. Well, my stats are getting pretty high, so I'd better save. Saving before going into the castle is advisable, because the Jester is a thieving jerk and will steal a random item from you occasionally. When this happens, I would prefer to just reboot and reload my last save, but since saving had become rather perilous, he frustrated me incessantly. In case you were wondering, the same rules of combat apply to the castle as they do the town. Killing the Jester, while satisfying, puts you in immediate danger, as all the nearby guards move in to attack you. When he dies, the Jester drops a key to one of the 2 dungeon cells. If you get the key to cell number 2, you can try to rescue the princess, but the guards are vicious and have tons of HP, so I died pretty quickly to them. My character thoroughly beaten by the guards, I resumed my grinding. By this point, I pretty much never died to any of the random encounters I, encountered on my path, but even so, I couldn't help but fear them. Normally in a game like this I would be saving constantly, so if I were to die I wouldn't lose too much time. With my save corruption issue, however, saving was fraught with peril. Each save was a veritable roll of the dice, but this one wasn't intentional by the game designer. I tried my hand at saving the princess again. Killing a single guard took forever, but I managed to get one eventually. Meanwhile, Lord British was just sitting there watching me. That smug bastard didn't even yell at me for killing his men. "Oh, look at me, I'm Lord British. I want you to go find the Tower of Knowledge over and over and over and over. Well, how do you like this? Ah, take that! Oh, I killed him. Let's just reboot and pretend that never happened. Okay, one more try. Make my way down to the princess, unlock the door, run past the guards, and I'm out! Yay! Saving the princess comes with substantial rewards, as you are granted 3,000 each of gold, XP, and HP, although the HP was sort of moot because I lost more than that trying to escape. Princess saving could be a viable means of grinding HP and gold, but I needed to be able to escape the guards more easily. At this point, I had made significant progress, or at least enough that I didn't really want to repeat the several hours of gameplay to get back to where I was, should my save finally become irreversibly damaged. I got more and more reluctant to play, knowing that any session might be my last. Obviously, something was going wrong with either the floppy disk itself or the drive. I did consider that it might have been the disks, as 5¼ inch floppies were notoriously unreliable, but I ruled that out by trying multiple different disks, and I kept having the same problem. I opened my drive, which I had purchased online, to clean it, and discovered it wasn't actually a real Apple drive. After a brilliant bit of deductive reasoning, I decided I should probably replace it. I went straight to the internets and ordered a new one. When it finally arrived, I tore open the box, chucked the bootleg drive, and installed the official one. Giddy with anticipation, I booted up Ultima and tried to save my game, and... uh-oh. That's new. No big deal. I could just save it again to fix it, like I always did, except that now I couldn't get back into the game at all. I couldn't do anything. By this point, I had already seen much of what Ultima had to offer, but I wasn't done with it yet, and I wasn't ready to declare defeat. Even if it meant starting over from scratch, I would finish this game, but how? To find out, you'll have to join me next time on The Quest Log.